Well, hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, technology, and gaming. Hope you're all doing well. And indeed, this is the very first episode of 2025, so I hope you've all had a rather nice little break over the festive season. If you have, if you are in the lucky position to have enjoyed a break, I personally haven't had much time off. I've been a very busy boy. Obviously, you've probably seen the announcement over on my main channel by now. But if not, YouTube is now a bigger part of my life. Not quite the I'm going full time announcement just yet. Unfortunately, my channel isn't quite big enough to sustain that kind of arrangement. So, still doing a little bit of contracting work on the side, but I'm going to be spending a big chunk of my week here in the studio and treating this as a proper job, and that's kind of my big commitment for 2025. So we'll have to see how it works out. To be honest, it has to work out because I don't really have any other option or any say in the matter. Yeah, I mean, as kind of detailed in the announcement and the kind of the more detailed behind the scenes video that I did, you know, I've been trying to be a businessman over the past 14 years, and it's not worked out very well for me. And it's about time that I was kind of honest with myself about that and kind of went back to my roots as a one-man band and kind of doing my own thing. But I've talked all about the reasons for that already. There is a video over on the main channel. I will link this down below, but you've probably seen it. I'm not quite sure how much overlap there is in the audience between the Rambles and the main channel. Perhaps there's some people out there who just listen to this every week and have no idea about what I do. I mean, a lot of the content on here is quite different to the main channel, I guess. Obviously, that has more of kind of a PC focus and a kind of Atari focus and stuff, whereas I talk about consoles and all sorts in my Rambles. So. Yeah, interesting to think about. I hadn't really considered that before. On that note as well, and kind of spending more time on YouTube and more kind of focus on it, I also made a video on my second channel. Now, this one perhaps wasn't quite received in the way that I hoped it would be, but of course, that's not my decision to make. So interesting to see some of the feedback on this. A lot of people giving me their thoughts on Linus, of course, Linus Tech Tips. So this was an interview that I saw over Christmas and I thought was really interesting. And it features Linus Sebastian of the channel Linus Tech Tips, of course, massive tech channel. And he's quite a polarizing individual, I guess, particularly his approach to videos. I know there are a lot of people who watch kind of smaller, more hobbyist independent channels like mine who are very much kind of put off by the big corporate approach that he uses and kind of have some quite strong feelings on that. And that's totally understandable. I must admit, I used to watch him religiously years ago, like 10 years ago when he was kind of first getting started. And as it's grown, I have found myself drifting away from it and more towards kind of similar sized channels to mine. So I totally get that. And that wasn't really the point of the video. The point of the video was just, I thought he actually raised some really interesting points about video making. Evidently, he's still involved in the process and still, quite knowledgeable on it all. And I thought that was kind of worth talking about, but it was more about the specific talking points. I mean, they could have come from anyone, but the fact that he's kind of a well-known, face in this world, I guess only helps, and also helps me to get the ball rolling on the second channel as well. But of course, I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about what's been going on in the news this week. I guess what's been going on with me is kind of news, isn't it? Yeah. But anyway, that's that. That's my personal update for the week. I know I usually save these for the end, but there you go. I was feeling enthusiastic and wanted to talk about it. Let's get on with the first story. So, a very nice conclusion this week to a story that I've been following for quite a while now, one that I've been talking about in these rambles. It seems like for most of 2024, there was some kind of interesting update on this project every week, and I am very, very pleased to report that you can now actually play with it yourself. So this is the port of GTA3 to the Dreamcast. So, yeah, the way I started this off, I don't want to give you a full kind of rundown of the entire story. I'm sure if you've been listening to these regularly, you will no doubt be familiar with it. But GTA3 was actually originally intended to be released on the Dreamcast, on Sega's console from 1999, of course. And very early on in development, Rockstar or was it DMA at the time? I can't remember the order that things went in, but yeah, quite early on in development, they decided that actually the Dreamcast wasn't going to be sort of commercially viable, which turned out to be the right call, unfortunately. It is one of my favourite consoles of all time, and it does make me sad to say that, but I guess it was ultimately a good business decision. Essentially, when this project was announced, some of the original developers did chip in and say, there's no doubt in our minds that this should be technically possible. It just wasn't commercially viable, and that's why we abandoned the project. And I kind of gave it an almost kind of semi-official endorsement, I guess. So this project has been ongoing in the background with regular updates. Started off as a guy floating down the street on his bum with not much else going on. And the whole thing has progressed from there to the point where they've actually released a playable version of this. So yeah, you can go to their GitHub and you can download the files, and there's some instructions on there to be able to build it. Of course, they can't distribute the actual game files. It uses all of the original assets from the games for the original models and data files and audio and everything else, all the music and everything. But yeah, of course, they are still selling this game and quite actively enforcing the copyright on it. So yeah, you have to kind of build your own version. But apparently it's not difficult. I haven't attempted it myself. And it is recommended that you run this using an optical drive emulator. So there's stuff like the GDEMU, I think, is the most popular one. That's the one I've got in my Dreamcast. But it does run from an optical disc, and it actually runs surprisingly well considering it's not really optimized. I mean, this is essentially an alpha release. And a good place to go and see this if you if you don't have a Dreamcast, or you don't want to sort of go through all the rigmarole of having to build it and get it transferred over to your console, is on MVG's channel. He made a really good video about this over Christmas. So he has this Impossible Port series, and basically he talks about games that came out on unlikely consoles, I guess, whether they're official ports or unofficial ports, or that kind of thing. Of course, he has a background in game development specifically. Let's just skip forwards to some of the gameplay footage here. And he runs it on his original console through an original display. It's completely unmodded console, and actually, even though they recommend against running it from disk, he is running it from disk, and it's playable. Of course, it's stuttery in places, particularly the audio and stuff, but absolutely incredible to see, particularly how good it looks as well. And the whole game is playable. All of the missions are in there, the whole story mode, all of the side missions, everything else. It's really kind of impressive what they've achieved in such a short space of time. So starting off this year with a really positive story on a project that I've been following for quite a long time and that I've been quite excited to check out myself. I do want to do a Dreamcast mod at some point. I know Tito, Macho Nacho, also put out a video over Christmas where he did like an ultimate modded Dreamcast. I don't have it ready to show you here, but it's got like HDMI mods and stuff in it. And that's kind of piqued my interest again in doing my own. So perhaps I'll put that on the list for 2025. I know there's a lot of love out there for the Dreamcast. But yeah, GTA3. It's available now, alpha release, ready for download if you have access to the original files, and they're not that hard to get hold of, I will say. You can build your own version or just go and watch MVG's video if you want to see it in action. So from one of my favourite consoles of all time to another now for the next story, this is the Atari Jaguar, or Jaguar, I guess, if you're the other side of the pond. Atari's ill-fated console from the early 90s. And it's always been one of my favourites because of course it's Atari, and I'm a big Atari fan. But when I was a kid, we got the Atari STE in 1991, and we got ST Format magazine every month for a couple of years after that. And they were very, very keen to push the Jag. Had screenshots of all the upcoming games, and it was the big console that was going to turn things around at Atari and save the company, and it was going to herald the coming of the upcoming 3D and virtual reality revolution, if you like. And we all know how that turned out. Of course, that's probably a subject for another time, and one that I could probably speak at length on. But yeah, the Jag's always been a bit of an oddball because it has some really interesting and unique games, and also some quite different ports of some games that also arrived on other systems. So historically, it's quite an interesting system. And there have always been some kind of hurdles to people actually discovering it. I mean, the best way for the longest time was to just buy the original console and buy a load of the original games. And for a while in the early 2000s, they were dirt cheap. But of course, as time goes on, they get rarer and rarer, and the interest kind of grows in it, and it prices a lot of people out of the market, unfortunately. And emulators, some of those early emulators in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, some good attempts at trying to emulate the system, but never anything that was kind of 100% correct and performant and 100% compatible and sort of fully polished, just because of the awkwardness of the Jag hardware. Of course, we finally got Big PMU or Big PEMU, or however you say it, in, 2022 as part of the Atari Anniversary Collection. And that was fantastic, and it was officially spun off into its own separate project, and development has continued on that. Most recently, a release for iOS with touchscreen support and stuff like that was released towards the end of last year. So that's pretty much a solved problem. But one that has always been a bit of a struggle, or at least since the inception of the Mister project, of course, is FPGA support. Having a proper Mister core, a proper FPGA core, of course, those FPGA-based consoles that use the field programmable gate array chip, which can accurately recreate the original hardware of these consoles, the original logic. So yeah, someone took the net lists, which are like the kind of original specs, the original schematics, I guess, for the original the custom chips in the Jag, and exported those and turned them into Verilog and turned that into an FPGA core. But it was never really, it's not a well-documented console, and it's not one that I think it's fair to say was kind of very well supported. But there has finally been a huge development in the world of the Atari Jaguar Mister core, if you like, and also some good news for Analogue console owners as well, that other big FPGA-based console. So I shall stop waffling on, and we'll just go and check out the story over at timeextension.com, shall we? So Atari Jaguar is coming to Analogue Pocket. And then the subtitle, which I actually think is the bigger news here, but that's probably just because I don't own an Analogue Pocket. Single RAM core also coming to Mr. FPGA. So this is a story about something that was shown on one of Pixel Cherry Ninja's live streams over Christmas, which unfortunately I didn't catch. I think I was out doing family stuff at the time. But he basically got the exclusive on this and showed this running for the very first time. So there is like I say, there's an Analogue Pocket core. So the Analogue Pocket is, of course, that handheld kind of Game Boy format FPGA-based console. You probably know that. I don't know why I'm explaining that. The developer, Mazamars, is really kind of putting a huge amount of effort into this core at the moment, and it's really showing. So that was shown in action, and also the single RAM Jaguar core for the Mr. FPGA. So this is big news because stuff like the Mr. Multi-System, which is the Mr. system that I use, so I am quite biased, but that only supports the single RAM configuration. You can get a dual RAM configuration for the Mr. And over the years, there have been various cores. I think perhaps most famously the Sega Saturn. I think the N64 started off as dual RAM as well originally. And there's a load of hoo-ha and people saying, it's never going to work on the multi-system because it only supports a single RAM configuration. And time again, those people are proven wrong. I don't say this in a smug way because I like to see people proven wrong, but the additional RAM is an extra expense, and it does tie up the GPIO pins on the Mister, which could be used for other stuff. In the case of the multi-system, they're used for providing an analog video output, so the SCART output and stuff, which I personally think is a fantastic trade-off, and once again proven to be the right decision. So yeah, not only some massive improvements in the Jaguar core, of course, I think recently it was reported that it was now 100% compatible with the entire Jaguar library, if not 100% bug-free, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, now it has been optimized to the point that it actually runs on a single RAM Mister setup as well. So some fantastic progress on that core, and I haven't had the chance to check it out over Christmas. I have been busy gearing up with YouTube stuff and everything else, dealing with the winding up of my company and all the other stuff that I talked about at the beginning of this ramble. But hopefully, in the coming week, maybe I will get a chance to actually sit down and try this out for myself. But if you want to see it in action, Pixel Cherry Ninja has a video up of that live stream, a video on demand. If you want to go and watch that and see how well it runs, and I have to say, it's looking absolutely fantastic. Of course, it's not all about FPGA in the worlds of vintage and retro computing and gaming just yet. There is certainly quite a bit of original hardware still out there, and those of us who do appreciate it and all of its quirks and the original accessories, original games, and the kind of the tactile experience that I think you can only really get with the original hardware, particularly if it's a machine that you have a particular kind of nostalgic connection to and love for, I guess. And for those of us who are still tinkering with that, upscalers are a fantastic option for getting them hooked up to modern displays. I mean, I own CRTs, I use my stuff with CRTs, but as someone who runs a YouTube channel, of course, I have a requirement to capture footage from a lot of these old consoles and things, and you can't beat a decent upscaler for that. So I started off with the original RetroTINK 2X, the very basic line doubler thing that Mike Chi made years ago, like 5 years ago. And then the various different improvements and versions came out. Of course, there was the OSSC. I picked one of those up fairly early on, and then the OSSC Pro, which I was involved with the testing of, and that looks absolutely fantastic. In fact, I should probably do an update video on that because I have tested it with a load of other stuff since that one went out. And I now use a combination of that and the RetroTINK 5X. Unfortunately, the RetroTINK 4K has been a bit out of my reach for various reasons. The main reason being that it's $750, but the other reason being that they're just being snapped up as soon as they go on sale, which is great. It's great for Mike. It's great to see it being successful, but yeah, not really a purchase I've ever been able to justify. So over Christmas, a new version was announced, a slightly cut down and much cost-reduced version. And I must say, I am very interested in this indeed. And because of the time of year that it came out, I think it's kind of been a little bit overlooked. It's not really something that I've seen widely reported. So I thought I'd take a little dive into this. This is the RetroTINK 4K CE. So this was announced 3 days ago on New Year's Eve. And it's an affordable edition. I'm reading this from the website, from the official RetroTINK.com website. Of course, everything I mentioned will be linked down below, as always. But yeah, reading from the website, we're excited to unveil the RetroTINK 4K CE, the RT 4K CE, an affordable addition to the RetroTINK 4K family. Designed as a cost-effective alternative to the RetroTINK 4K Pro, the RT 4K CE delivers the same outstanding quality and performance you've come to expect, now at a more accessible price point. So you plug your old console into this, you plug it into your modern TV, and it turns the video signal from that console, or computer indeed, or even like stuff like VCRs and stuff like that, or your laser discs. It takes the video output from these devices and it turns it into a nice, modern, clean, crisp format, and also does some additional kind of processing on that signal, if you like, stuff like deinterlacing and cleaning up video. It's all well over my head. But anyway, so the 4K CE is based on the same core platform. So it uses the same hardware and firmware framework as the full-blown RT 4K Pro. It uses a slightly smaller FPGA, but it is one that is compatible and runs the same cores, as long as they're small enough to fit in the smaller FPGA, of course. So it's not going to run the full-blown RetroTINK 4K Pro firmware. It is complete, so it has been manufactured. This isn't some kind of Kickstarter or anything like that. These have been manufactured. They're just waiting for the delivery of some of the final bits and pieces before they put them on sale, which is great. And once they go on order, once they go on sale, you can order it and they will ship immediately. So this is $475, which is quite a big discount on the $750 of the full-blown RetroTINK 4K Pro. There is a video by our good friend Bob from Retro RGB, which is well worth going and checking out. Puts his thing through its paces and kind of shows what it's all about. So yeah, it's compatible with all of the existing profiles. So people have created some absolutely fantastic profiles for the RetroTINK scalers, just to really get the absolute best out of very specific consoles. I mean, you can see the list here if you're watching this on YouTube, or at least a partial list. Of course, these consoles all used ever so, of course, they were compatible with the standard definition TVs of the time, but ever so different video timings and things like that. So getting those 100% dialed in to really get the absolute best kind of pixel perfect accuracy out of the picture. Proper nerdy stuff. And it supports all of those, all the existing ones that are out there. So that is fantastic. And I think that's probably the most important thing. It's got the same set of inputs and outputs, covering virtually every retro video source imaginable, according to the blog post here. So we've got SCART, we've got RCA, we've got a VGA port, we've got composite and S-video. I forgot to mention S-video before, didn't I? It's got digital video input, so it accepts HDMI, and it's got a Toslink audio input as well. So if you've got the digital optical audio output from your console, you can feed that through this as well. If you're using perhaps one of the like the Xbox or PlayStation 2 kind of generation consoles with it. And it does CRT simulation with the different masks. It supports all of the existing RetroTINK 4K masks, which is really cool. It supports HDR, full linear light HDR10 and HLG processing. I don't even know what that means, but it's to do with the range of colours that are supported and the depth of the blacks and that kind of thing, I think. And you've got different interpolation filters, scaling, cropping, and all of that. And the blog post goes on to basically explain you might get to this point and think, well, why on earth would I want to buy the Pro if this basically supports everything that it does? So there is also a list of stuff that it doesn't do. So it won't rotate the picture. So if you're using like original arcade PCBs and stuff that output like a vertical image, or indeed if you're using it with like a vertical monitor and you want to rotate the picture, that's actually quite complicated to do in an FPGA based on my understanding with frame buffers and that kind of thing. So it doesn't support that. Input width limitations. So input source horizontal width is limited to 2048 pixels. Not really a problem with your retro consoles. Deinterlacing, the deinterlacing support isn't quite as sophisticated as it is on the full-blown 4K. Of course, that's another thing that's quite complex. Do I go into detail here about what deinterlacing is? I probably don't need to. It's to do with the way the lines are drawn on the screen. So whenever I try to get too technical, I always end up saying silly things. So go and look it up yourself. Inverse telecine. This is to do with taking frame rate. So go and read it on the blog post. There's a load of other stuff. The S-Video only supports very basic S-Video input. Apparently there's a more advanced standard that this doesn't support, not one I've come across. To be honest, it's properly nerdy stuff. It's properly high-end, and Mike Chi, who designs and builds these things, really does know his stuff, and he has made it, really, really sort of clever decisions in the trade-offs that he's made with this version of the RetroTINK 4K. I can't see a reason for me personally to want to buy the Pro now. The only thing I will say is that $475, and no doubt that it is worth the money to those people who have a big collection of old consoles and a fancy 4K TV and stuff. But to me, I think it's still a bit pricey. I don't think I'll be picking one of these up. I'm quite happy with my existing solutions, but fantastic to see this. It's essentially exactly the same thing with exactly the same software support, just using a slightly smaller and less complex FPGA. And of course, the FPGA is the big expensive part of these scalers. So, sensible place to try to cut some costs. There's also a new range of dongles which support various input and output standards, different consoles, that kind of thing. That has also been announced along with this. So there you go. And the return of the RT2X Mini. And as stated earlier, the RetroTINK 2X is the one that I started with, that basic kind of line doubling upscaler. So we have come full circle. But yeah, it looks really, really cool, this, and I think it's one that may have been a little bit overlooked in the New Year rush. Big fan of these scalers. I love all of them. They all have their own applications and their own uses, and it's great to see Mike putting out another RetroTINK, because it's a range that I've always been very happy with and very supportive of. The original Xbox, a console that I have covered on my channel, a console that has a pride of place on my desk. Of course, there's no Mr. Core for that, so it's literally on my desk at home. I have the Mr. Multisystem and the OG Xbox next to each other, the one that I HDMI modded on my channel and indeed have owned from new. And I remember when I got that console, all of our friends, we were all into the Dreamcast at the time, and we saw the Xbox as like the spiritual successor to that. They certainly have a lot in common. And all of my friends kind of picked them up around the same time. And one game that was absolutely huge was Halo, of course, multiplayer Halo. And we were huge nerds. We had access to things like network cabling and switches and stuff. And we actually had, around a friend's house, a 16-player game. At least on one occasion, it may have been on multiple occasions, we actually managed to get 16-player games of Halo up and running, which was the maximum that the game supported, just on a local network. This was before like Xbox Live became really big. So it's a game that I remember very fondly, and I stuck with it through the Halo 1, Halo 2, and then Halo 3 came out on the Xbox 360, which I also picked up. And then it kind of fizzled out, and I kind of lost interest in it. There was, of course, the Master Chief Collection that came out, I think it was last year, which was kind of remastered and packaged up and released on PC and stuff. I bought it. I started playing through the first game again. Kind of lost interest in it, to be honest with you. But still, a game that I still hold very fondly in my heart. And it was very interesting to see a huge leak that has happened over Christmas, not of a new Halo game, but of a huge amount of historical stuff, because I remember seeing this stuff being covered in the gaming magazines at the time. I was an avid reader of PC Gamer, and they were kind of covering the story, how it was, it was going to be a Mac game, was it? And then it was going to be a PC game, and then Microsoft decided it was going to be an Xbox exclusive, and it was a very a roller coaster of emotion at the time. But Yeah, the headline here from GamesRadar.com, almost 100 gigabytes of classic Halo content has leaked online, including the 1999 demo from when the legendary FPS was in third person. So yeah, it was originally a third-person game. I think a lot of people have probably forgotten about that over the years. And this is it's a team of modders working for in a group called DigSite, and essentially they were trying to kind of work in an official capacity to recover historic Halo stuff to be used in kind of modern remasters and stuff like that, is essentially the backstory behind this, as is my understanding. So yeah, it says here, the leaks are said to have originated from Halo Studios, and that's formerly 343 Industries, of course, a long-running collaboration with modding team DigSite, which has been excavating scrapped content and old files before adding them back into the classic FPS games. So Halo 2's infamous E3 2003 demo was recreated and modded back into the Master Chief Collection just last month, as was an Arbiter mission that never crossed the finish line 2 decades ago, all of which were reconstructed with official design documents left over from the Bungie era. Of course, Bungie being the company that originally made Halo. I don't understand why Microsoft keep messing around and moving it between developers. And I think the end of the Bungie era was kind of when I lost interest. But anyway, that collaboration, Games Radar continues, seems to have led to this week's massive leak, which includes unfinished and cut content from those old school Halo games, as well as a long-lost demo from the series' brief time as a third-person shooter. Before Bungie joined Xbox's roster, Halo was first unveiled as a third-person Mac exclusive, with a big Macworld demo from 1999. And that infamous demo is now fully playable on PC. So yeah, there are links to a couple of tweets here. So the first one here is from Manny Calavera. Good name, that. I get this reference. And this is basically the original, the beta, the original kind of reveal trailer, just looking around, looking at the kind of the big Halo structure in the sky and some of the landscape and stuff as well. Very short clip here, but really cool to kind of see this very old historical footage again. And the second tweet is from someone called Vinicius Medeiros. And this is basically, this is actually really big. So this is a playable beta build, so you can actually drop in and play this, run around the levels and fire the weapons. And I don't think the vehicles are drivable. It's certainly not shown in this video, but the vehicles do seem to be there. So, your Scorpion tanks and your Warthogs and stuff like that. Is it called Scorpion? I think it was a Scorpion, wasn't it? And yeah, just really interesting to see kind of graphically how the game looked, and as it was as a third-person shooter as well, originally. Now, there is a link to download all of this stuff on archive.org, as you might expect. But, interestingly, I actually went to check this out just now, just so that I could show it as part of this recording. And it's been taken down. This item is no longer available. Items may be taken down for various reasons, including by decision of the uploader or due to a violation of our terms of use. So, the big story being that this was made available for you to download and play. And these were just, straightforward Windows executables that you can just download and run. And now there's been another twist. It's vanished. And that's very unusual for the Internet Archive, isn't it? Obviously, somebody at Microsoft didn't like this and has made it disappear, which is a real shame, because having this stuff preserved, it's part of the history of the series and the history of gaming. And I think having it preserved and available for people to check out is quite important. So, be interesting to see how that develops. But yeah, it's unusual to get a huge leak of historical stuff, isn't it? We hear in the gaming news about upcoming games and things being leaked, but never stuff from 20 years ago. So yeah, I thought that was interesting to check out, and unfortunately I did miss the opportunity to be able to grab a copy of it myself before it vanished, but I'm sure it's available elsewhere. I'm not going to tell you where to find it here. I'm probably going to go looking for it, if I'm honest, but we'll keep that between us. And that brings me around quite neatly to my regular weekly Video of the Week feature, wherein I talk about a video that I've watched in the past week here on YouTube. Now, I must say, I haven't really watched much stuff in the past week. I tend to start this segment off by just having a dig through my history and picking something that I have genuinely watched and genuinely found interesting. But yeah, not really much. Slim pickings, but there has been one really big story that I wanted to bring to light. And I think this is really relevant as well with my recent announcement as well about YouTube kind of being a bigger part of my life, and how this is essentially going to be partly my job going forwards. And it's to do with sponsors. Now, this actually first dropped a couple of weeks ago, and I watched it at the time, but there has been quite a big development. So this is going to be another I'm going to recommend 2 videos. I don't know how else better to put that. So this is to do with this honey influencer scam thing that people have been talking about for the past couple of weeks over Christmas. It was on a channel called Megalag, and honey it's an online coupon extension thing, a browser extension, and it's caused quite a stir. This video is fantastic. It's a really good piece of investigative journalism. Really kind of goes into a really deep dive into what honey is all about and how they've basically bought all of these influencers, these YouTubers, and got them to flog it on their channels. So, people like Mr. Beast and Marques Brownlee and really, really big names. I mean, it's a huge company. Like I say, it's part of PayPal. And there have been all sorts of weird and deceptive business practices uncovered around this company about them hijacking other people's affiliate links and stuff. And, some people do kind of rely on those links for their income. But much worse stuff than that. Companies paying them off to not offer the best discounts on their websites and stuff like that. It's like a proper racket. It's like mafia type stuff. So fascinating to see what's been going on. But as mentioned, there has been a development in the past day or so as well, and I thought this was really interesting because this actually came from one of my favourite channels. And this is Legal. Now, Legal is he's a proper lawyer. He owns his own law practice, and basically sponsors his own channel and advertises his own law practice, the Eagle team, in his videos. And he does really good kind of ongoing commentary about big legal cases in the news and stuff like that. It's not really a world I know much about, and I find it absolutely fascinating. But he has now not only covered this, but has launched his own class action lawsuit against Honey, against PayPal, essentially, on behalf of all of these creators that have kind of been suckered into to pushing this thing, against the best interests of their viewers and stuff. I mean, I know Marques Brownlee put out a statement about this. I haven't actually watched it because I've kind of gone off him just lately for reasons, but. So if you're a YouTuber and you've been sponsored by Honey, and I appreciate that's a very, very small group of people, and you feel like you've been wronged or it's been misrepresented or that they've hurt your reputation by association, then you can actually join Legal's class action lawsuit against them. So really fascinating saga this. I appreciate it's not really all that related to retro gaming and retro computing and stuff, but some really big tech channels involved in this, and I think it affects all of us as people who kind of watch YouTube and see these sponsor spots and stuff. As stated in my big announcement video today, picking a reputable sponsor to work with and doing it in such a way that doesn't annoy or insult your viewers is quite a minefield, and. I personally wouldn't take on a deal like this. There are more important things in life than money, but fascinating story. Go check it out if you are interested in that. That's my videos of the week. And sadly, some slightly less positive news to end this week's ramble on, but I need to acknowledge this, of course, and pay my respects. The passing of a very important person and a giant, I think it's fair to say, very influential individual in the world of game development, unfortunately, over the Christmas period, and that was Martyn Brown, the co-founder of Team 17, best known for their Worms series, and I guess if you're an Amiga person, Alien Breed, but he went on to achieve, he had a very long and illustrious career in the world of game development, went on to achieve quite a lot, which I won't go into here, but unfortunately, very sadly, after a series of strokes, has passed away at the age of 57, which is no age really, is it? But a really thorough and in-depth obituary here over on gamesindustry.biz, which of course I will link to down in the usual places. Lots of great tributes and memories and things from his kind of compatriots in the world of game development. So rest in peace to Martyn Brown, sadly gone too soon. And just wanted to acknowledge his contribution to the world of gaming. So thank you ever so much for joining me for this week's Ramble, the first one of 2025, and I will see you in the same time, same place next week. Links to all of the stories that I have discussed in this week's Ramble are available down in the description, or if you are listening on one of the many and varied podcast platforms, hopefully they get pushed out to all of those as well. I know you can find them on Spotify at the very least. But that's all I have for you for this week. Thank you very much, and I shall see you next week. Bye.